Ambassador John Carter stood at the large window of the spaceship and looked out at the stars. His hands were behind his back, and his face was calm, but inside he felt worried. Today was the most important day of his life. Today he would try to save humanity from a war they could not win. The ship was called U.S. Harmony, and it was flying toward a space station near a distant planet. This station was neutral ground where humans and aliens could meet safely. At least that was what everyone hoped. The aliens were called the Zephyrian Collective, and they had been taking human worlds for the past 5 years. Captain Lisa Morgan walked up to John and stood beside him. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She had been flying spaceships for 20 years and had never lost a crew member. Today she was more nervous than she had ever been. "How are you feeling, Ambassador?" she asked quietly. John turned to look at her. He was 55 years old, with gray hair and kind blue eyes. He had spent his whole life trying to solve problems with words instead of weapons. "I feel like the weight of the entire human race is on my shoulders, Lisa." "It is," she said simply. "But if anyone can do this, it's you." John smiled sadly. "I hope you are right. The Zephyrians have taken 12 of our worlds already. Millions of people have lost their homes. Children have been separated from their families. Good people have died for no reason except alien greed." Lisa nodded. She had seen the refugee ships coming back from the lost worlds. Families carrying everything they owned in small bags. Old people who had lived their whole lives on one planet, suddenly homeless in space. It broke her heart every time. "The government is offering them everything they asked for," John continued. 12 more worlds in the outer rim. Mining rights to 3 asteroid belts. Even some of our technology. Surely they will accept this deal. But Lisa could hear the doubt in his voice. She had studied the Zephyrians for months, and she did not trust them. They were insect-like creatures with 4 arms and big compound eyes. They were bigger and stronger than humans, and their technology was more advanced. Most importantly, they seemed to enjoy causing fear and pain. Chief Security Officer Danny Phillips came over to join them. He was a young man with red hair and freckles, who looked like he should be playing baseball instead of guarding diplomats. But John knew that Danny was one of the best security officers in the fleet. "Ambassador, the alien ships are moving into position around the station," Danny reported. "There are 15 of them, all heavily armed warships." John frowned. "That seems like a lot of ships for a peace meeting." "That's what I was thinking too, sir," Danny said. "My team is ready for anything. We have 20 security officers on board, and the escort ships are standing by." Lisa shook her head. 20 officers and 3 escort ships against 15 alien warships. "If they want to start trouble, we don't stand a chance." "Then we better make sure they don't want to," John said firmly. "This has to work. Earth cannot fight a war against the Zephyrian Collective. They have hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. We have barely 50 colonies and maybe 200 warships total." The truth was even worse than John was saying. Humanity had spread out among the stars quickly, but they had focused on exploration and trade instead of military power. Most human ships were cargo vessels or passenger liners. The few warships they had were designed to fight pirates and smugglers. Not an alien empire. Dr. Karen White joined the group at the window. She was the ship's translator and one of the few humans who could speak the Zephyrian language. She was a small woman with blonde hair and thick glasses who looked more like a librarian than a diplomat. "I have been studying their recent communications," she said. "Something feels wrong about the way they are talking. Usually they are very direct and aggressive, but lately their messages have been almost polite." "Too polite? What do you mean?" John asked. "It's like they are trying to be nice, but they don't really know how," Corinne explained. like a predator pretending to be friendly to get close to its prey. Ryan Bell, the cultural attaché, overheard and came over. He was a tall, thin man with dark hair who had spent years studying alien behavior. I agree with Karen. In all my research, I have never seen the Zephyrians act this way. They respect strength and despise weakness. The fact that they agreed to this meeting at all is suspicious. John felt his stomach tighten. Are you saying this is a trap? I'm saying we need to be very careful, Ryan replied. The Zephyrians don't think like we do. They see diplomacy as a form of weakness. In their culture, the strong take what they want from the weak. The idea of negotiation and compromise is foreign to them. Captain Morgan checked her watch. We will reach the station in 2 hours. Ambassador, do you want to review your speech? One more time? John nodded and walked to his cabin. The speech was memorized, but going over it again made him feel better. He sat at his small desk and opened the folder containing humanity's final offer. 12 outer rim star systems would be given to the Zephyrians completely. These were worlds that humans had just started to colonize, so there were not many people living there yet. The asteroid mining rights were worth billions of credits and would give the aliens access to rare metals they needed for their fair technology. Most importantly, humanity was offering to share some of their medical technology. Humans had developed treatments for diseases that affected many species, including the Zephyrians. This was valuable beyond measure, and something the aliens had wanted for years. In return, the Zephyrians would stop their expansion into human space and recognize Earth's territorial boundaries. There would be a permanent peace treaty and trade agreements that would benefit both species. It was a fair deal, maybe even generous. But John could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Why had the aliens agreed to meet so quickly? Why were they bringing so many warships? Why did their communications sound strange? He opened his personal tablet and looked at pictures of his family. His wife Mary was a teacher on Earth. His son Paul was studying engineering at the Mars colony. His daughter Amy was a soldier in the Colonial Defense Force. They were all depending on him to prevent a war that would destroy everything they loved. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called. Danny Phillips entered looking concerned. Sir, I just received a message from Earth Command. Intelligence reports that the Zephyrians have been moving large fleets toward the border zones. Much larger than anything we have seen before? John felt his blood turn cold. How large? Over 300 ships, sir. All of them warships. 300 ships was more than the entire human fleet combined. If the Zephyrians were planning an invasion, this meeting might be their last chance to prevent total disaster. Thank you, Danny, John said quietly. Please don't share this information with the crew. We need everyone focused on making this negotiation work. After Danny left, John sat in silence for a long time. Outside his small window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere among those stars were billions of humans living their lives in peace. They went to work and school and played with their children, never knowing that their entire civilization might end because of what happened in the next few hours. John had been a diplomat for 30 years. He had solved trade disputes and territorial conflicts across human space. He had negotiated treaties with a dozen different alien species. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Zephyrians were not like other aliens humans had met. Most species wanted to live in peace and trade with their neighbors. The Zephyrians seemed to want only conquest and domination. They had destroyed 3 other civilizations before turning their attention to humanity. But John had to believe that even the Zephyrians could be reasoned with. They were intelligent beings with their own culture and values. Surely they could understand that war would hurt both sides. Surely they would prefer to gain territory through negotiation rather than bloodshed. The ship's intercom crackled to Life, this is Captain Morgan. We are now approaching the neutral station. All crew members please prepare for docking procedures. John stood up and straightened his diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric was decorated with the symbols of Earth and the Colonial Alliance. On his chest was a small pin showing a dove carrying an olive branch. It was the ancient symbol of peace. He walked back to the bridge, where the crew was busy preparing for the meeting. Through the main view screen, he could see the space station growing larger. It was a massive structure built by the Galactic Council. For exactly this purpose, neutral meetings between species that could not trust each other. But surrounding the station, like hungry sharks, were the Zephyrian warships. They were dark, angular vessels that looked more like weapons than spaceships. John counted them carefully, 15 ships, just as Danny had reported. Each one was larger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet. "Ambassador, we are ready to transport you to the station," Captain Morgan announced. John took a deep breath and looked around at his team. Karen White clutched her translation device nervously. Ryan Bell was studying his notes about Zephyrian culture one last time. Danny Phillips was checking his sidearm, even though weapons were forbidden on the station. "Remember, everyone," John said. "We are here to save lives, not to win an argument. Whatever it takes to prevent a war, we will do it." The transport beam finished, and John Carter found himself standing in a large white room on the neutral station. The air smelled different here, clean but cold like a hospital. Bright lights came from panels in the ceiling, and the walls were made of some kind of smooth metal that reflected everything like mirrors. Karen White appeared beside him, followed by Ryan Bell and 2 security officers. The rest of Danny Phillips' team would stay on the ship, but these 2 men would guard the meeting room from outside. They wore simple black uniforms with no weapons visible, but John knew they carried hidden tools that could protect the diplomats. If needed, a tall robot with blue lights for eyes rolled up to them. "Welcome to Neutral Station Gamma," it said in a voice that sounded almost human. "I am Unit 7, and I will guide you to Conference Room Alpha. Please follow me." They walked through long hallways filled with more bright lights. The station was huge and mostly empty. It had been built to host meetings between different alien species, so the rooms were designed to work for many kinds of beings. Some had different gravity levels. Others had different atmospheres. Conference Room Alpha was made for species that breathed oxygen like humans. "How many Zephyrians will be at the meeting?" John asked the robot. "High Commander Vex Thul will attend with 5 advisors," Unit 7 replied. "They arrived 3 hours ago and are already waiting in the conference room." John felt his stomach tighten. The fact that the aliens were already there meant they were eager to get started. That could be good or bad. Either they wanted to make a deal quickly, or they had already decided what they were going to do. They reached a set of large double doors made of the same reflective metal as the walls. Unit 7 pressed its hand against a panel, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. "Conference Room Alpha is ready. The session will be recorded for both governments as requested. Good luck with your negotiations." John walked into the room and immediately felt small. The ceiling was very high, and the room was much larger than it needed to be. A long oval table sat in the center, with chairs on both sides. On the far side of the table sat 6 of the most frightening creatures John had ever seen. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects that had learned to walk upright. They were each about 8 feet tall, with dark green skin that looked like armor. Plating. Their heads were shaped like triangles, with huge compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Each alien had 4 arms ending in hands, with 3 long fingers and sharp claws. Commander Vex Thul sat in the center chair, and was even larger than the others. Scars covered his face and arms, showing that he had fought many battles. When he moved his head to look at John, the sound was like metal scraping against stone. Ambassador Carter, Vex Thule said in heavily accented English. You are smaller than I expected. High Commander, John replied with a polite bow. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I hope we can find a path to peace between our peoples. Vex Thule made a sound that might have been laughter. Peace is what the weak ask for when they cannot fight. But we will listen to your words, human. Sit and tell us what you offer. John sat down across from the alien commander. Karen took the seat to his right and opened her translation device, even though Vex Thule seemed to speak English well enough. Ryan sat to his left with his notes about Zephyrian culture. The two security officers remained standing by the door. Before we begin, John said carefully, I want you to know that humanity values this opportunity to avoid conflict. We believe that both our species can benefit from cooperation instead of war. War is not cooperation, Vex Thule replied. War is when the strong take what they need from the weak. But continue. What do you offer to buy your survival? The words hit John like a physical blow. Buy your survival, not negotiate peace or establish borders. The alien commander was talking about humanity like they were already defeated. John opened his folder and began to read from the prepared offer. The Earth Colonial Alliance is prepared to cede complete control of 12 star systems in the outer rim territories. These systems contain 4 habitable worlds and significant mineral resources. He watched Vex Thule's face carefully, but the alien's expression never changed. The compound eyes reflected the light in strange ways, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. We are also prepared to grant exclusive mining rights to the Kepler asteroid belt, John continued. This includes access to rare earth metals and crystalline formations that your people need for advanced technology. One of the other Zephyrians leaned forward. This one was smaller than Vex Thule, but had more scars on his arms. Tell us about your military capabilities, human. How many warships do you have? John hesitated. This was not the kind of question he expected during peace negotiations. I don't think military matters are relevant to our discussion. We are here to prevent conflict, not plan for it. Everything is relevant, Vex Thule said coldly. Answer the question. Karen touched John's arm gently. She was reminding him that they needed to keep the aliens talking, no matter what they asked. The Colonial Defense Force has approximately 200 active vessels, John said reluctantly. And how many of those are real warships? The scarred alien pressed. Not cargo ships with weapons bolted on. Real fighting ships. John felt sweat forming on his forehead. Perhaps 50 vessels are dedicated military platforms. But as I said, we are here to discuss peace, not war. The aliens exchanged glances and made clicking sounds that Karen's translator could not understand. John got the feeling they were laughing at him. Continue with your offer, Vex Thule commanded. John took a deep breath and went on. In addition to territory and mining rights, we are prepared to share certain medical technologies. Humanity has developed treatments for cellular degradation diseases that affect many species, including your own. This got the aliens' attention. Several of them leaned forward, and their clicking sounds became more excited. John knew that the Zephyrians suffered from a genetic condition that caused their armor-like skin to break down as they aged. Human doctors had found a way to treat similar conditions. These medical treatments could extend Zephyrian lifespans by 50% or more, John explained. We are willing to share this knowledge freely as part of our peace agreement. What about your defensive capabilities? Another alien asked. How do you protect your homeworld? Again, John was confused by the military questions. Earth has orbital defense platforms and a fleet of patrol ships. But why does this matter for a peace treaty? We like to understand the things we are dealing with, Vex Thule said. Tell us about your population centers. Where do most humans live? John looked at Ryan, who shrugged slightly. These were odd questions, but not technically classified information. Earth has about 8 billion people. Mars has 2 billion. The Luna colonies have 500 million. Most of our other worlds have smaller populations. Karen was typing rapidly on her device, trying to translate the clicking sounds the aliens made to each other. Her face was getting pale, and John could see her hands shaking slightly. "What are they saying?" he whispered to her. "I'm not sure," she whispered back. "Some of the words don't translate properly, but I think they are talking about targets and timing." A cold feeling spread through John's chest. Targets and timing were military terms, not diplomatic ones. High Commander 1. Notice your advisors are discussing military matters. I hope this doesn't mean you are planning to reject our offer. Oh, we are not rejecting anything, Vexthul said with that scraping laugh. Your offer is very generous. 12 star systems, mining rights, medical technology, military intelligence, population data. You have given us everything we need. Everything you need for what? John asked. For the complete conquest of your species, Vexthul replied calmly. The room went silent. John felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. I don't understand. We came here to negotiate peace. No, Vexthul said, standing up. You came here to surrender, and we accepted your surrender. But we never agreed to let you live. The other Zephyrians stood as well. They were all much taller than the humans, and suddenly the room felt very small and very dangerous. Wait, John said desperately. There has been a misunderstanding. We are offering you these territories and resources in exchange for peace, a treaty that benefits both our peoples. Peace is boring, Vexthul said. War is much more interesting. And your military is so weak that it will barely be a war at all. John looked around the room frantically. The 2 security officers by the door had their hands on their hidden weapons, but they were badly outnumbered. Karen was still typing on her translator, looking for words that might save them. Ryan was staring at the aliens with growing horror as he realized what was happening. Please, John said, think about what you are doing. Millions of innocent people will die if you start this war. Children who have done nothing wrong. Families just trying to live their lives. That is the point, Vexthul said. We want your worlds, but we do not want your people. It is easier to kill you all and start fresh than to rule over a conquered population. The alien commander reached under his ceremonial robe and pulled out a weapon that looked like a metal tube with glowing elements inside. John had never seen a Zephyrian plasma pistol before, but he knew immediately what it was. This meeting has been very helpful, Vexthul continued. General Patricia Hayes sat in her command chair deep underground beneath the Rocky Mountains. The bunker was called Deep Station Alpha, and it was the most secure military facility on Earth. Thick walls of steel and concrete protected it from nuclear weapons, and the rooms were filled with computers that could control every human. Ship in space. Patricia was 60 years old, with short gray hair and cold blue eyes. She had fought in 3 wars against alien pirates and space raiders. She had seen good soldiers die in battle, and she had made the hard decisions that kept humanity safe. But she had never seen anything like the video that was playing on the main screen. Ambassador John Carter stood in the conference room, trying to save his people through words and kindness. High Commander Vexthul pointed a plasma weapon at his chest and spoke about conquest and murder like he was discussing the weather. Then the weapon fired, and John Carter died for believing that even monsters could be reasoned with. The video had been broadcast across Zephyrian space as a victory celebration. They wanted every alien species to see how easily they had killed Earth's ambassador. They wanted the galaxy to know that humanity was weak and defenseless. They were wrong about that. Turn it off, Patricia said quietly. The screen went dark, but the image was burned into everyone's memory. Around the command center, 24 military officers sat at their stations watching their general's reaction. They had all seen the video, but none of them knew what would happen next. Admiral Kevin Burke stood up from his chair at the tactical station. He was a tall, thin man with dark hair and scars on his hands from his years as a fighter pilot. "General, what are your orders?" Patricia looked around the room at the faces of her staff. These were the best military minds humanity had produced. They had spent years preparing for threats that might never come. Today they learned that the worst threat of all was already here. "How long until the Zephyrian fleets reach our border systems?" she asked. "Intelligence estimates 72 hours, replied Colonel Sam Mitchell, the head of military planning. "They have over 300 warships moving in 3 separate groups. Our outer colonies won't stand a chance." Patricia nodded slowly. She had expected this day would come eventually. Humanity had spread across the galaxy too fast and made too many enemies. The only question was whether they were ready for what came next. "Send word to Dr. Helen Ross," she ordered. "Tell her that Project Doomsday is now active. Full authorization. No restrictions." The officers in the room exchanged glances. Most of them had heard rumors about Project Doomsday, but only a few knew what it really was. Admiral Burke was one of them, and his face went pale when he heard the general's words. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" he asked carefully. "Once we activate those protocols, there's no going back." "John Carter is dead, Kevin," Patricia replied. "They murdered him on live television and laughed about it. They planned to kill every human in the galaxy and take our worlds for themselves. There is no going back from that." She stood up and walked to the large map display that showed human space. 57 star systems with colonies ranging from a few thousand people to billions. Each system had families and children and people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. The Zephyrians wanted to murder them all. "For 20 years we have pretended to be a peaceful species," Patricia continued. "We built exploration ships and trade vessels and science stations. We talked about diplomacy and cooperation and finding our place in the galactic community. All of that was a lie." Dr. Helen Ross entered the command center through the secure elevator. She was a small woman with wild red hair and thick glasses who looked more like a college professor than a weapons designer. But she was responsible for creating the most terrifying military technology in human history. "General, I received your message," she said breathlessly. "Are we really doing this?" "The Zephyrians just declared war on our entire species, Helen," Patricia replied. "They murdered our ambassador and broadcast it for entertainment. What do you think?" Helen nodded and pulled out a small device that looked like a communicator. "Computer, activate Project Doomsday. Authorization Ross 77 Alpha. Confirm." "Identity," a mechanical voice replied from speakers around the room. "Identity confirmed, Dr. Helen Ross. Project Doomsday activation requires secondary authorization from military command." Patricia walked over and took the device. "Computer, this is General Patricia Hayes. Military authorization, Hayes 99. Omega, activate Project Doomsday immediately." "Authorizations confirmed. Project Doomsday is now active. All hidden assets are coming online. Estimated time to full readiness is 6 hours." The room fell silent as everyone processed what they had just heard. Project Doomsday was no longer a secret research program. It was now the active defense plan for the entire human race. "What exactly are we unleashing?" asked Colonel Mitchell. Helen adjusted her glasses and pulled up a holographic display showing the solar system. "For the past 15 years we have been building a second military that exists in complete secrecy. While our public fleet has 200 ships, our hidden fleet has over 800 vessels. The display showed dozens of locations throughout the solar system were massive. Shipyards had been constructed inside asteroids and behind gas giant moons. Each facility had been disguised to look like mining operations or research stations. The ships themselves are completely different from our public fleet, Helen continued. They are not designed for exploration or trade or showing the flag. They are designed for one purpose only: the complete destruction of any species that threatens humanity. Admiral Burke activated his own display, showing technical specifications that made several officers whistle in amazement. The UES Vengeance is our new flagship. It carries something called a planetary pacification array. One ship can sterilize an entire world from orbit in less than 6 hours. We have 50 ships with planet-killer weapons, Helen added. 200 ships with Nova-class artillery that can crack moons in half. 300 assault vessels designed to land troops that can destroy cities with handheld weapons. And 50 ships carrying something we call the Stellar Devastator. What does that do? Patricia asked, even though she was afraid of the answer. It turns stars into supernovas, Helen said quietly. One ship can destroy an entire solar system. We built them because we knew that someday we might face an enemy so dangerous that half measures would not be enough. The command center was completely silent now. Everyone was thinking about what this meant. Humanity had not just been preparing for war. They had been preparing for genocide. There's more, Helen continued. Operation Ghost Fleet has been running for 10 years. We have been taking old cargo ships and civilian vessels and secretly converting them into weapons platforms. There are over 2,000 ships scattered across human space that look harmless but carry enough firepower to level cities. Colonel Mitchell brought up another display showing troop numbers. Our public military has about 50,000 soldiers, but we have been secretly training civilian populations on every world. When the real war starts, we can put 10 million armed fighters into the field within hours. Patricia walked back to her command chair and sat down heavily. The scope of the secret preparations was staggering. While diplomats talked about peace and politicians debated budgets, the military had been turning humanity into a weapon pointed at the galaxy's throat. How long have you known about this? Admiral Burke asked. I helped design it, Patricia replied. 20 years ago, we ran war games against potential alien threats. Every scenario ended the same way. Humanity loses because we are too scattered, and our enemies are too advanced. So we decided to change the rules. She activated her personal display and showed classified intelligence reports dating back decades. We have been watching the Zephyrians since they destroyed the Centauri Republic. We knew they would come for us eventually. We have been preparing for this war since before John Carter was even an ambassador. Dr. Ross pulled up another display, showing weapons that looked like something from a nightmare. The individual soldier equipment is just as advanced as the ships. Our assault troops wear powered armor that makes them nearly invincible. Their weapons can punch through starship HULLs. A single squad can destroy everything in a 10-mile radius. What about the moral implications? Asked Colonel Mitchell. These weapons could wipe out entire civilizations. Patricia looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war. The Zephyrians just told us they planned to murder every human in the galaxy. They killed our ambassador while he was trying to save lives. They broadcast his death for entertainment. What morals do you think they deserve? The displays around the room showed the true scope of humanity's hidden strength. Thousands of ships emerging from concealment. Millions of soldiers taking up weapons. Orbital platforms powering up systems that could crack planets. Mining stations revealing themselves to be mass drivers that could throw asteroids at enemy. Worlds. This is what we really are, Patricia said, standing up again. We are not the peaceful explorers we pretended to be. We are not the diplomatic traitors who just want to get along with everyone. We are apex predators who chose to be civilized. But when civilization fails, we become something much worse. Admiral Burke activated the fleet communication system. Commander Jake Thompson stood on the bridge of the UE's Vengeance and watched as his ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr Prime system. Around him, the first wave of Earth's Retribution fleet materialized like ghosts emerging from a nightmare. 50 ships that had been hidden for decades were now ready to show the galaxy what human anger looked like. Jake was 38, years old with brown hair and green eyes that had seen too much death. His wife and children had lived on the colony world New Denver until the Zephyrians took it 6 months ago. He had watched the evacuation ships leave, knowing that some families did not make it out in time. The aliens had killed innocent people, just to prove they could. All ships report ready for combat operations, announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mills from the communications station. She was a young woman with black hair who had volunteered for this mission after losing her brother. In the Kepler raid, tactical display on main screen, Jake ordered. The view screen showed the Zephyr Prime system with its 3 planets and massive orbital shipyards. Hundreds of alien vessels moved between the planets like insects swarming around a hive. Most were cargo ships and civilian transports, but Jake could see at least 50 warships among them. Intelligence was right, said Major Alex Stone from the weapons console. They pulled most of their fleet back to defend the homeworld. Makes our job easier. Alex was a weapons specialist who had spent 5 years designing the systems that could crack planets in half. He was a quiet man with gray hair who rarely smiled, but Jake had never seen anyone better at turning enemy ships into expanding clouds of plasma. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, Sarah reported. Hi, Commander. Vex Thul wants to speak with you. Jake almost smiled. The alien leader who had murdered Ambassador Carter now wanted to talk. Put him on screen. The image of Vex Thul appeared on the view screen. The giant insect creature looked exactly the same as he had in the video of Carter's murder. 4 arms ending in clawed hands, compound eyes that reflected light like broken mirrors, scars covering his face from years of violence. Human Commander, Vex Thul said in his harsh voice, you have made a mistake. This system is protected by the full might of the Zephyrian Collective. Turn around now, and we will allow you to retreat. Jake activated his own transmission, so the alien could see his face. Hi, Commander Vex Thul. I am Commander Jake Thompson of the Human Defense Force. 6 hours ago, you murdered Ambassador John Carter and his diplomatic team. You broadcast their deaths across the galaxy like it was entertainment. The ambassador was weak, Vex Thul replied, just like his entire species. You cannot threaten us with 50 ships when we have 500. You're right, Jake said calmly. 50 ships would not be enough to destroy your entire civilization. That's why I brought friends. He activated a fleet-wide signal, and suddenly space around Zephyr Prime filled with human warships. 200 vessels materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. The alien commander's compound eyes widened as he watched more ships appear. 300, 400, 500 ships emerging from the darkness like angels of death. The human fleet now outnumbered the Zephyrian defenders 10-1. This is impossible, Vex Thul said. Intelligence reports said humans only had 200 ships total. Intelligence reports lie, Jake replied, especially when the people giving them information want you to underestimate them. We have been planning this war since before you destroyed the Centauri Republic. We know exactly how dangerous you are, and we came prepared. On the tactical display, Jake could see the Zephyrian ships beginning to move into defensive positions. Their warships were forming up around the orbital shipyards, while civilian vessels fled toward the outer planets. It was a smart tactical move, but it would not help them. "Commander Townsend," came a voice from the communications station. "Admiral Burke is requesting permission to begin the operation." Jake nodded. "Tell the Admiral that Operation Cleansing. Fire is authorized. All ships are weapons-free." Admiral Kevin Burke's voice came over the fleet communication system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Burke. You have watched the video of Ambassador Carter's murder. You know what these creatures did to innocent people who came in peace. Today we show them what happens when you betray human trust." The first salvo from the human fleet lit up space like a small sun. Energy beams and missile salvos reached across millions of kilometers to strike the alien shipyards. The structures had been built to construct warships and supply military fleets. They were heavily armored and protected by defensive shields. It did not matter. The planetary pacification array on the UES Vengeance fired a single beam of coherent energy that cut through the largest shipyard like a sword through paper. The facility exploded in a ball of plasma that could be seen from the planet's surface. 8,000 alien workers died in the first second of the battle. "Direct hit on Shipyard Alpha," Major Stone reported. "Target destroyed. No survivors detected." Around the system, human ships closed in on their targets with mechanical precision. The UES destroyer used Nova-class artillery to crack the moon-sized defense station in half. The UES Retribution launched guided missiles that hunted down fleeing cargo ships and turned them into debris clouds. But the most terrifying sight was the UE's Nightmare. The ship looked like a flying weapon with no other purpose than causing destruction. It moved between enemy vessels, firing constantly, and everything it touched simply ceased to exist. The Zephyrian warships that had seemed so powerful were nothing but targets waiting to be eliminated. "This is not war," Vexthul said over the communication channel. "This is slaughter." "Yes, it is," Jake replied coldly. "Just like what you plan to do to every human world. The difference is that we are better at it than you are." Colonel Amy Carter watched the battle from the bridge of the assault ship UE's Justice. She was John Carter's daughter and had requested permission to lead the ground invasion personally. Amy was 28 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes like her father, but there was no kindness in her expression now. "Colonel, we have cleared a landing zone on the planet's surface," reported Captain Tom Wilson from the pilot station. "The alien ground defenses have been neutralized." Amy looked at the tactical display showing Zephyr Prime below them. The planet had 4 billion inhabitants living in massive cities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Most were civilians who had nothing to do with the murder of her father. She did not care. "All assault teams prepare for planetary insertion," she ordered. "Remember your briefing. This is not a conquest operation. This is an extermination mission. No prisoners. No survivors. No mercy." The assault ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. Each one carried 100 soldiers wearing powered armor that made them look like mechanical demons. Their weapons could level city blocks, and their armor could withstand direct hits from tank cannons. Amy was the first soldier to set foot on Zephyr Prime. She looked around at the alien landscape with its strange purple vegetation and crystalline rock formations. In the distance, she could see one of the great Zephyrian cities with its towering spires and defensive walls. "Remember what they did to Ambassador Carter," she said over the unit communication system. "Remember that they plan to murder every human in the galaxy. Show them what happens when you cross the human race." The assault began immediately. Human soldiers moved through the alien city like a natural disaster. Their weapons turned buildings into rubble, and their armor shrugged off everything the defenders could throw at them. Amy led from the front, cutting down enemy soldiers with a plasma rifle that her father would never have approved of. The Zephyrians fought bravely, but they were completely outmatched. Their weapons had been designed to fight other insect creatures, not humans in powered armor. Their tactics assumed they were fighting enemies who valued their own lives. The human soldiers attacked like they were already dead and just wanted to take as many aliens with them as possible. City 1 is secure, Amy reported. Moving to City 2, estimated alien casualties are 300,000 and rising. Back in space, the orbital battle was nearly over. The Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of ships trying desperately to escape the system. But the human vessels were faster, and their weapons had longer range. Every alien ship that tried to run was hunted down and destroyed. Commander, we are detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface, Major Stone reported. The aliens are charging some kind of super weapon. Jake looked at the tactical display and saw energy readings that made his blood run cold. The Zephyrians had a planetary defense cannon capable of destroying capital ships with a single shot. If it fired at the fleet, they would lose dozens of vessels. Target that weapon system with the pacification array, he ordered. Maximum power. Sir, that will cause significant damage to the surrounding area, Stone warned. There are alien civilians within the blast radius. They should have thought about that before they murdered our ambassador, Jake replied. The pacification array fired again, and the energy beam struck the weapon system like the fist of an angry god. Admiral Kevin Burke stood in the command center of the U.E.S. Dominion and watched as 17 Zephyrian star systems burned on the tactical display. Each red dot represented billions of dead aliens and the complete destruction of worlds that had existed for thousands of years. 3 weeks had passed since the murder of Ambassador Carter, and humanity's response had been swift and merciless. The Dominion was humanity's most advanced warship and carried the Stellar Devastator weapon system. It was a device so powerful that using it would be visible from other galaxies. Kevin was 55 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much destruction. He had never wanted to use the ultimate weapon, but the Zephyrians had left him no choice. Admiral, we are receiving another surrender offer from the remaining Zephyrian worlds, reported Commander Lisa Park from the communications station. She was a young officer with short black hair who had lost her parents in the alien raids. What are they offering this time? Kevin asked. Complete withdrawal from all human territory, Lisa replied, reading from her screen. Reparations for all damages caused. Immediate execution of all military leaders involved in the ambassador's murder. And they are willing to become a protectorate of Earth. Kevin looked at the tactical display showing the last Zephyrian stronghold. The system called Nexus contained their final military base and the remnants of their government. About 500 million aliens still lived there, along with their most powerful warships and defensive systems. Send them our standard response, he ordered. Lisa activated the communication system. This is Admiral Burke of the Human Defense Force. Your offer is rejected. There will be no negotiations, no surrenders, and no mercy. You murdered Ambassador John Carter and planned to exterminate our entire species. The penalty for that crime is extinction. The message would reach Nexus in 20 minutes. Kevin knew what the response would be because it was always the same. The aliens would beg for forgiveness and promise to be peaceful. They would offer to give humanity everything they wanted if only their species could survive. But it was too late for that. Dr. Helen Ross entered the command center, carrying a tablet with the final calculations for the Stellar Devastator. She looked exhausted after weeks of coordinating humanity's war effort, but her eyes were still bright with scientific curiosity. Admiral, the weapon system is fully charged and ready to fire, she reported. The target star has been analyzed and confirmed suitable for induced nova. Estimated blast radius will encompass the entire Nexus system. Kevin nodded. How long until the reaction becomes irreversible? Once we begin the stellar destabilization process, there will be approximately 47 minutes before the star goes supernova, Helen explained. After that point, nothing can stop the explosion. And the other star systems in the area? The nearest inhabited system is 12 light-years away, Helen replied. They will see the explosion, but there will be no physical damage. Kevin walked to the observation deck and looked out at the Nexus star. It was a yellow sun, very similar to Earth's own star. In a few hours, it would become the brightest object in this part of the galaxy for exactly 17 seconds. Then it would collapse into a neutron star, leaving behind only radiation and memories. Sir, we are receiving a direct communication from the surface of Nexus Prime, Lisa announced. It's from someone calling himself Supreme Commander Zekvol. He says he is the new leader of the Zephyrian Collective. Put him on screen, Kevin ordered. The view screen showed a Zephyrian who looked different from the others. He was smaller and had fewer scars on his face. His compound eyes seemed to reflect more intelligence and less cruelty than Vexthul had shown. Admiral Burke, Zekvol said in careful English. I am Supreme Commander Zekvol. I have assumed leadership of the Zephyrian people after the death of Vexthul. I want to speak about ending this war. There is no war, Kevin replied. War implies that both sides have a chance of winning. This is an execution. Please listen. To me, Zekvol continued, I did not order the murder of your ambassador. That was Vexthul's decision, and he is dead for it. I am offering complete surrender. We will do anything you ask. Kevin studied the alien's face on the screen. Unlike Vexthul, this one seemed genuinely afraid. There was no arrogance or contempt in his voice, but it did not matter. You want to know what we ask, Kevin said. We ask that John Carter and his diplomatic team be returned to life. We ask that the families displaced by your expansion be given back their homes. We ask that the billions of humans who died in your raids be restored to their loved ones. Zekvol's compound eyes seemed to dim. That is impossible, Admiral. We cannot undo what has been done. Exactly, Kevin replied. Since you cannot give us what we really want, we will take what we can get. The complete elimination of your species from the galaxy. The alien commander was silent for a long moment. Admiral, I understand your anger, but please consider the consequences. There are children on these worlds. Civilians who never harmed anyone. Artists and scientists and teachers who only wanted to live in peace. Kevin felt a flash of anger. Ambassador Carter wanted to live in peace too. He spent his entire career trying to solve problems without violence. Your predecessor murdered him on live television for entertainment. That was wrong, Zekvol admitted. Vexthul was a monster who cared only for conquest and glory. But not all Zephyrians are like him. Some of us believe in honor and cooperation. If that were true, you would have stopped him before he started. This war, Kevin replied, you would have arrested him for murdering diplomats. Instead, your people celebrated his victory and prepared for invasion. Dr. Ross activated her tablet and showed Kevin the energy readings from the Stellar Devastator. Admiral, we need to begin the process soon if we want to maintain optimal conditions. The star's magnetic field is shifting, and that could affect the reaction. Kevin nodded and turned back to the screen. Supreme Commander Zekvol, you have 45 minutes to evacuate any civilians you want to save. After that, this star system will cease to exist. 45 minutes is not enough time to evacuate 500 million people, Zekvol protested. Even if we had enough ships, it would take weeks to move everyone. Then you should have thought about that before you started a war with humanity, Kevin said coldly. 44 minutes and 30 seconds. The communication ended, and Kevin turned to his crew. All ships move to minimum safe distance. Activate the Stellar Devastator. Deep inside the Dominion, massive machinery came to life. The weapon system was larger than most buildings and required the power output of a small star to operate. Energy fields focused on the Nexus sun began to destabilize the nuclear reactions that had been burning for billions of years. Stellar. Stabilization has begun, Helen reported. The star's core temperature is rising rapidly. Magnetic field fluctuations are increasing. We have committed to the reaction. Kevin watched the tactical display as Zephyrian ships began fleeing the system. Most were small civilian vessels carrying refugees who would never reach safety in time. A few military ships tried to run, but they were too slow and too few to matter. Admiral, we are detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface. Commander Park reported. The aliens are powering up some kind of defense system. The screen showed Nexus Prime with huge installations across its surface generating shields and energy barriers. The Zephyrians were trying to protect their world from the coming supernova. It was a futile gesture, but Kevin had to admire their determination. Can their defenses protect them from a stellar explosion? He asked. Helen shook her head. Nothing can protect them, Admiral. When that star goes nova, it will release more energy in 1 second than their entire civilization has used in its history. Kevin activated the communication system one final time. This is Admiral Burke to all Zephyrian vessels. You have 30 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. Any ship that does not clear the blast zone will be destroyed along with your worlds. Some of the fleeing ships changed course, trying to reach the edge of the system faster. Others continued their hopeless evacuation efforts. Kevin counted about 200 vessels total. Even if they all escaped, it would only be a tiny fraction of the Zephyrian population. Admiral, the star is becoming unstable, Helen announced. Core collapse will begin in approximately 20 minutes. Kevin looked around the command center at the faces of his crew. These were good people who had joined the military to protect humanity, not to commit genocide. But sometimes protecting the innocent required destroying the guilty. I want everyone to understand what we are doing here, he said. We are not just destroying a star system. We are ending an entire civilization. After today, there will be no more Zephyrian collective, no more threat to human worlds, and no more aliens who think they can murder our diplomats without consequences. Commander Park raised her hand. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. Do you think Ambassador Carter would have wanted this? She asked. He was a man who believed in peace and diplomacy. Would he approve of genocide as revenge for his death? Kevin was quiet for a moment. He had known John Carter personally and had great respect for the ambassador's commitment to peaceful solutions. But he also knew what would have happened if humanity had not responded with overwhelming force.